день, коллеги. Мы начинаем нашу панельную дискуссию.
So, colleagues, we're beginning our new discussion, which will touch upon the client-centric AI. We would like to discuss, among other things, the approaches that we can have to large interagency task, how we can offer an interface between the government and the private sector to solve AI tasks, to be able to reach government targets and to make governance human-centric, as the word goes. Today we have with us the following participants: Sergei Anakostin, Deputy Head of Analytical Center at the Government of the Russian Federation, Head of the Artificial Intelligence Center, Vadim Banikov, Russian Federation, Roman Tanin, Director of the Department of Rostelecom, Viktor Kuzmin, Head of the Project for Corporate and Government Segment at the Sputnik Search Portal, Dmitry Sedin, Head of the Department of Information Technology and Intellectual Governance Center, CITES. So, dear colleagues, before we begin our discussion, I would like very briefly to touch upon the initiative which is now being prepared together with the Ministry of Education and Science. Now, I'll explain very briefly where this comes from. Dmitry Chernyshenko instructed all the agencies at the federal level to create at least 2 data sets and at least 2 services based on AI. And as part of this work, Rospatent offered its solution, Ministry of Education proposed its solution, and we have been able to find a synergy, as we call it now, which helps us to continue our work using AI, and it makes our work more effective. I think that my slides will find. Colleagues, could you please help me switch the slides, because I cannot do this. That's the first case when we really need AI, right? No, AI does not always help in these cases. Now, basically, each of the agencies proposed their solutions. We have discussed solutions offered by Rospatent quite extensively today. I would like to repeat myself. Clearly, these include search engines, creating search mechanisms based on neural networks, creating an uncomfortable environment for our users, for our applicants, reaching something which seemed unreachable in the past. For instance, creating such search engines would be able to return up to 80% of relevant results. At the moment, we're dealing with 60, 65, 70%, which is already considered quite a high return. But the most important attainment at the moment, it was when we joined our forces with the Ministry of Education, was mutual replenishment of the data sets, of patent databases and R&D databases, mutual replenishment with information from our sources and from the sources of the Ministry of Education. What is our idea of how this can work? Well, to start with, the task that the Ministry of Education had and still has is to raise the quality of R&D. It will be reached as follows. The result that is attained should be state-of-the-art, should be relevant, should be new. This is what we do at Rospatent. We create the information database. We prepare news about the global technical solutions that are innovative, that are new. in the course of our dialogue, we realized that this system can be combined with our information resources, that a data set can be created which could be that could be based on patents or a family of patents that would tell us that this particular research is designed to have a patent as its outcome, or at the time when a patent is included in the database of the search system, it will be checked for similar technical solutions offered worldwide, and whether this particular solution proposed is new worldwide. And like I said, this will help both individual and physical entities to start working together via an API. It will work as follows. There's a data set, there's a database of Rospatent. It is used for a mechanism which is based on neural networks. And if a piece of a formula or an extract from a text from an application is included, then the system can automatically check all the 160 million patents for similarity, for something similar. And it's highly likely. At the moment, it's already 60% probability now, and by the end of the year, it will be 80% probability. The system will be able to check for anything similar which exists out there in the global scene, in the global data knowledge set. So what can be undertaken then? If it is not new, it can be adjusted, it can be corrected, it can be made more innovative, more relevant. If it's an idea which is new, then it can be made patentable. Now, our data set at Rospatent enables us checking all the global patent databases and telling to what extent this particular application is innovative. And this can be done independently. Previously, you had to file an application to Rospatent. There was a certain procedure, and then following the procedure, you receive feedback, a reply, and now anybody can do this online. Now, this solution was proposed to use this approach to our joint work. Vadim, I think you would be in a better position to tell us and our colleagues about this. Well, I think our colleagues will tell us more about the joint work with Rospatent that hasn't been going on already. Maybe without AI so far, but we have seen some integration processes that are underway that have been developing for a number of years already. Now, talking about the synergies. As we were creating the data sets, as we were using AI to work on our systems, the GIS and Neocter, we invented several dozens of data sets because the system was so large and so diverse that we were able to demonstrate that we could extract. If we use analytics, neural networks, and machine learning, we could extract a lot of various data. We could create data sets that would help us to write new dictionaries, for instance, to be able to include them into machine translators. We could also see what research had been carried out with what persons and what outcomes were. We also tried continuing this research together with the Ministry of Economic Development. Then we also wanted to use AI to search into the ministry's databases to see how a particular research was supported. We also had an idea, only we didn't have much time because we were getting prepared for the presentation to Minister Medvedev. we also wanted to see how this research, the results of this R&D was implemented. Yes, and it's very important. Oh, yes, you're right. So our hypothesis was that research for the sake of research is a right thing to do, is the correct thing to do. But you need a result. Basically, we monitor all the R&D even today, because most contracts for R&D should end up in a particular patentable story, a particular patent. But then, after the patent expires, after a patent is prepared, what can you do about it? So we thought that such a data set could be used to ensure a better quality of research implementation. For the private sector, we believe it could also be interesting because there's corporate research, there's fundamental science, there's theoretical science. So this quantum leap from applied science to business is quite difficult to make because it takes time to do research. It takes time to prepare a utility model. Then it takes time to start industrial production. So it takes a lot of time. You need to accelerate. So even in this case, AI, if we just take the case of 2 data sets, we thought it would be quite good to accelerate this process. Oh, yes, definitely. Commercialization, subsequent commercialization of the research and of the outcomes is on the agenda. It's quite a relevant topic. And I'm convinced that the first steps we have been making can prove useful already in corporate research, among other things. For instance, we all know this case when corporations need to understand how to develop a particular idea, but they don't have any tool, they don't have any data to rely on. Now, we at Rospatent see this mutual, this cross-fertilization as quite a useful exercise. Yes, I think it has been quite useful, and it will be even more useful. The thing is that we haven't been able to undertake certain steps in the past, but we're now getting closer and closer to this. Now, we, for our part, will find it useful because we will understand what research has been used to generate particular patterns. Now we only see an outcome, whether it is a failure or a success. But when we do our expert assessment, we proceed from patent literature, non-patent literature, we search in databases of other IP offices, but checking down this line, seeing where the result has brought us, this is something which is not possible for us at the moment. And this would be very good for us to have a comprehensive look, to have a comprehensive view, to be able to raise the quality of patents and to be able to commercialize our patents. The more patentable, the more protectable is a patent, the more viable it will be in the future. Right, and I will add here that this data set also enables you to track correlated research, because it may be a series of research that can result in a patent, and at the end there can be a series of research that will end in a patent. So when we start connecting them, we also begin to see where it all began, which research was the first, and it may well happen that several researches resulted in one patent, or vice versa. One research resulted in many patents. So this gives us the understanding of the history and of the market trends. Absolutely right. So shall we give floor to our colleagues? Dmitry, please, you have the floor. Right. Yes, it is quite understandable that it is highly relevant, highly topical to create AI in all the spheres of human life. And clearly, the correctness of AI operation depends mostly on the data which AI used to learn and how this data is used. It is also important to understand what tasks can be solved using AI and what information it takes to solve these tasks. So with respect to today's agenda, clearly we're talking about patenting the results of intellectual operations. We need to identify commercial results that can be commercialized. And this is certainly a very important topic for the Ministry of Education and Science. Our center has been involved in preparing a full picture that we need to ensure proper operation of AI, including, among other things, with patenting of data which is identified as part of research. So, this was the job that we have carried out at the Ministry of Education and Science. We modernized the system of research control and recording. We have created a special integrated service that enables working together with patent officers. The purpose of this work is to track and to record all the steps of patentable inventions and to record the author's priority with respect to these inventions. Our agency, Rospatent, was closely involved in this work. So was the Federal Institute of Industrial Property. So the work included the following steps. Firstly, a service was drafted as part of our project, and then the service was used to generate, using Rospatent's template, to generate an application to record the patent and to file this patent for recording. The functionality of this service helps to synchronize all the IP assets in various databases together with applications at Rospatent. It is all based on the government-issued serial numbers which we use to record. As a result, the following operation was carried out. The applicant was forwarded from the ISO-NIOCO system to Rospatent, and there the applicant was enabled to obtain full information on the application, and if there was a patent, then the number of the patent was issued to the applicant. But we didn't stop at that. We see that this is a highly relevant topic, so we also developed a second part of this service. And this second part of the service ensured interaction via our data set with the Eurasian Patent Office to be able to solve issues related to monitoring and patenting our inventions abroad. This service was built as follows. There were two possibilities. One, file an application for an invention directly. That was in the case our database had already a particular invention recorded. Or if a patent had been received in Russia, and at least 6 months have passed, that was if a patent was recorded in Russia and at least 6 months passed after its registration. A second option was file this application via the Federal Institute of Patent Property. This applied in case a patent hadn't been received in Russia yet, and this invention had to be checked for government secrets. So this was a double approach that was proposed to save the applicant's time. So, in this way, we continue our work in this respect. We're ready to provide all the necessary information and to obtain necessary information to prepare a full picture to be able to work, to provide information for good quality operation of AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really, this work was being done, and this is one of the stages which we saw and which we did. But still, it's clearly very important to understand the bonds between the entity or the agency which creates R&D and the entity which provides for the protection of the R&D. So that's a huge interdepartmental objective. How does it look like? Is it Series 1? Is it elaborated enough? We discussed the artificial intelligence already. Probably. The AI capacity is not enough. And probably we have to deep dive into that. My question goes to Rostelecom speaker. Roman. Roman. As an expert, as an expert in the area of throughput technologies, this solution, is it really justified or not? Well, thank you so much. My name is Tavin Roman, a GR expert from Rostelecom. I'd like to start with my experience of to using the technologies. Starting from 2019, and we remember, the artificial intelligence has become one of the national projects. And ever since, we identified three major pillars of problems. First of all, this is about the purification of data. Just like any house rests on a foundation, the artificial intelligence rests on data, and we have to purify that, to clean it, and verify that in compliance with the objectives which were put forward. The second problem was about misalignment of objectives. Rostelecom is a commercial organization, and therefore the project's implementation should give us certain benefits, and we certainly are looking at the end users. Sometimes we are losing the focus for whom we're actually doing all these things. And number three, this is about connectivity, because you cannot build one system for one entity and there is no similar system in another entity. It brings about misalignment, and therefore for all the working groups, so we suggest that we'll come to the common denominator, that we have to generate some common understanding of what is needed in order to provide for mutual understanding or integration. And speaking about entities, actually, Rospatent is not affected by that development. Data is quite good, quite quality, and there is some rationale about that. So this is my answer. Thank you, Roman. Sergey, I also have a question to you. Speaking from your own capacity, in your own capacity, from your own perspective, this objective, is it viable, is it interesting, or it requires fine-tuning? Could you also tell us about other areas which we have to pay attention to? I would say that I'd rather have my presentation on the screen, and probably you will find some answers to some of your questions. Generally speaking, the project which we have presented in terms of integration of the patent base with the database on the R&D, it really follows the trend of all the majors, of all the leaders of the market, the captains of the industry. But let me put it mildly, that this project will have not only to run, but to leapfrog, to cross different barriers. There are 2 decisions in Russia alone, and there are about 10 decisions or rulings abroad. solutions which integrated the patent base with the grant base, but also the publications database, investment database, and HR database, print database, and publications database were all integrated. And other topics were incorporated on hot topics in the social media. Rostelecom offered one of such solutions. There is a solution generated by the High School of Economics. The value of the project which we have presented lies in the fact that actually it's been anticipated when everyone is looking forward to see when R&D database in Russia is being connected to the patent base. So actually we have such a connection to the patent base. But there is no connection to the R&D base. And to have that, there would be a connection through patent base. Thank you. I got prepared to answer two different questions. Therefore, in the first part of my presentation, I will give a general overview. Colleagues from Sberbank, they are actively participating in the methodological work to assess the efficiency for AI implementation in all the public sectors. One of the projects has already been proposed. Certain criteria were developed in order to assess what effect AI may bring to Strategy 2030. They did the calculation, and they got an effect which we may expect, and it would be enormous. Almost 6 times, following different criteria, we will see an increase in of the efficiency of the artificial intelligence, either the speed or velocity with which the client would get service. We're speaking about the client-driven services and technologies, where the service would be of high quality, or the unbiased nature of decision-making would improve. So, in all those segments, the efficiency would go up 6 times once AI technology is being used. Besides, we see a rise in attaining the national goals which were put forward by the President in part of acceleration of digital transformation, for instance. There is a huge increase there that attests to the importance of that technological area we're speaking about. And the same is true of the analysis of the R&D information and the relevance of other publications. And that's a very busy slide, and I made it busy on purpose so that as spies could not guess what it is, but I hope that our viewers, they see that in every detail. I'd like to focus on the lower part, which is called the sources of data about R&D. And here you see the list of all those groups of R&D information which are being connected to the state-of-the-art solutions. The publications, these databases, the patent databases, some publications in the mass media, contest data or bidding data, tender data about the acquisition and purchase of the modern technologies. And you may immediately identify where certain advances are available, startups and other information, vacancies, for instance, job opportunities. If we manage to analyze all these things, then accuracy and objectivity of the conclusions about what technology is going to be popular or widespread for everyday life, such a focus becomes very realistic. There are several problems. The system doesn't work as easy as it may seem. There is a low illustrativeness of the decision. So it means that even if you use machine learning technology in order to upload data from that system, still it won't be legible, it won't be quite good. So it means that you will need a human brain, an analyst, to interpret and explain the decision taken by AI. And certainly, the manual work by analysts has to be simplified, and to this end we need dashboards which will show clearly where, why, and how. So, meaning to explain on the top level, absolutely. There is one more idea, which looks as a science fiction, although it was an attempt to make it terms of reference for such a project. We are making analysis of the grants applications for grants. So, for instance, R&D team will send an application for a grant with 50 pages report, expected results, certain achievements, the overview of literature, etc., etc. And usually such an application would be quite thick document. So this file has been connected to the system. You push the button and the system says, "Come on, guys, 4 years ago, Australia, this and that University of Sydney already did it." Certainly you can repeat that, but just you have to state that explicitly, that it would be about re-examination of the results achieved by our foreign colleagues. So it means that this is not a unique and a breakthrough disruptive technology. So such an approach would really explode the scientific world, and there are a lot of opponents to such a system because it will be very transparent. Who actually is just playing hockey and who really has no opportunity to make certain disruptive ideas come true. There is an expert group which is drafting such terms of reference, and we speak about the accuracy of this focused of that data, and we hope that step by step we'll come up with such a system, and providing for data fusion and R&D system. I think that's a very good step forward because it will improve the accuracy of the system analysis. High School of Economics and Rostelecom will celebrate this fact because they would like to lay their hands on this database of the Russian R&D works. Well, thank you so much for your information about what's being done there. Checks and audits, probably. They can be included into the project which we spoke about before, because we are using the services which would be checking the grants or the researchers or incomplete researchers as to availability of similar solutions, the ones which are already protected. Probably it might be a very dangerous step for development of science, so that some breakthrough ideas are not blocked immediately. The scientists certainly have to understand what they can do in order to circumvent such barriers. Well, I very much admire your accuracy and delicacy when indicating mistake on that slide. This slide actually doesn't contain the name of Oleg Yan, who helped us to write it. Actually, I didn't even expect that the integration is so deep. Well, but actually probably this slide is too busy, and therefore we'll have actually to expand it a little bit. Thank you, Sergey, thank you so much, really. I think you are experts for us, you're a paragon for the development for us. We have to specialize in the area where we are experts. We made a long journey, so hopefully it will go on like that. In the course of Sergey's presentation, I got a question how the search engines may evolve, how we should in future. The search in the patent literature, in other types of literature. I have a question to Victor. Probably some futuristic approach. Can you share it with us? Without support of the society, without the support of the R&D standards, nothing can be done. And as far as this is a free-flow discussion which doesn't imply any keynote speeches or official statements, can you tell us how you see all these things? Thank you so much. You know, before speaking about the future, I'd like to touch upon the questions we have to address now in order to achieve tangible results in the near future. Let me stress certain such aspects. First of all, this is about the labeling of data sets. That's a very good direction forward with the support of the government when we started publishing data sets, but the labeling of them, that's a very sophisticated problem, whether AI can recognize them. These marks, these labels, once we encounter fusion of data, we understand that whole R&D teams have to work on the labeling. They have to speak the same language, so that this enrichment result can be used in future. FIPS, the Rospatent Institute, does a very science-intensive work on selecting technologies, modern technologies, and probably some technologies for the future, which actually would help us to develop some thesaurus, which would contain scientific data and the data about the applications and patents. Such a throughput approach can rest on that, and not just an experts from the core institutes have to take part in that. We have to expand the number of stakeholders, the ones who are making certain contribution to that. And the second serious objective is the legibility for a machine, the databases and data sets which are being shaped. They have to be comprehensible for a machine. As far as actually we're speaking about big data, further services have to be built on that. The services which would consider grants and would analyze patentability of certain services and products, and the data from the mass media, whether it's true or not. And in that sense, it's very important to provide for the legibility for machines. Between two services, actually, if you put a human in between, the efficiency would drop dramatically. It has been done for standardization of the data presented, especially the patent data, the standards which is being offered by WIPO. This is XMA format and GSOM format, something which allows us to increase structuring, to process that by machines, and a big deal of experts are familiar with that, so this is not just a niche technology. And it might be used across the table, across the industries. Bring together those two things, the quality labeling and machine legibility, actually, we can move forward and seek not only some twins or doubling or deny certain applications, reject certain applications, but we may reproduce certain knowledge, and all the AI-based technologies are aimed at that.
Victor had this question, or maybe this idea. As Secretary Sergey was discussing this, he was saying that the author of the application and the party working on the grant, when they work on this anti-plagiarize project, they may receive a reply that there are lots of articles, lots of publications about this already. So you'll be blocked from further promotion of this idea, and then you will either have to quit this project altogether, or you need to introduce some corrections into your work. Can people, will they be able to, will the AI be able to offer any comments as to how a human can do this, an expert in expert assessment of inventions? Will AI be capable of offering such piece of advice or such instructions as to how to adjust your results better to make them patentable, to avoid a new round of research? Yes, indeed. This is the third range of problems that I would like to raise. It's the way you select algorithms. What am I referring to? Clearly, the mechanism of patent analytics and assessing patent landscapes works in a different way. It is far better than a human. They can identify the white spots not covered by patents or even research. They can identify where these research areas overlap or where they cross. They could give hints on areas which require patents. And in this respect, you either need to be to have the capacity or to be able to use the entire library of algorithms which are available now. It is no secret the neural networks were launched a long time ago. So all the mathematical basis is already there. But it is quite diverse. And the way it can be used includes hundreds of various approaches. So we think that in the future it will be not a human. Clearly, a genius plays a fundamental role in the history of mankind, but most probably machines will select algorithms to give the highest possible effect. And this brings us to a very crucial topic of quality, search quality, algorithm quality, AI quality. Usually, in the grassroots meaning of this word, humans will assess the quality. They look at the results and they say, I think that the mechanism shows me what I like. I found something useful, I received an effect, etc. But this is very difficult to formalize. I would also call this AI. Converting this quality assessment into machine format. Machine format is there to be able to avoid manual selection and to transfer to machine-based selection. We're talking here about machine learning, relearning, building multi-level hierarchies, systems from decision-making, and in this way we can make a quantum leap in our progress. Let's say we have gathered lots of various AIs and we have identified the chief AI. This AI will decide who is better, who is worse. Then this agglomeration, this cooperation, can come up with a totally different level of results. We can not only receive feedback like a particular area of research is not promising. We can even receive recommendations to close down particular businesses that will not be able to switch over to a new type of products 5 years, 10 years later. And then these jobs can be used elsewhere. People can be used, capacity, equipment. So, as regards to commercialization, there's another thing I'd like to mention. When we talk about machine reading or affordable APIs, available APIs, then we see that we have a huge range of opportunities. We've had this pilot project quite successfully with the Moscow Innovation Cluster. And in their personal account, they have access to the research base. There's already a demand to extend this range of information. This, in turn, is another step, a very broad step to patent commercialization, to get IP protection as part of innovative activities, practical activities, which is almost very close to its industrial application, a real-life application. And R&D plays a fundamental role here, because inventing an idea is one thing, like inventing a light bulb, inventing a chemical formula, etc. But R&D, which will result into a utility model or into industrial sample, is a totally different level of organization. This means you need to bridge a gap between the idea and the implementation. And we have excellent outlooks in this respect. You can analyze the efficiency of R&D via the patentable ideas that are included into this R&D. And you can come up with an estimate of potential of a particular idea or service. And in this way, you can extend the information available. And clearly, it is for AI to do this work. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you. I have a question to Vadim. Vadim, the initiative which we are discussing here together, which we're proposing here together, the colleagues are saying that it has good outlooks, and we have even been invited to work on a joint work group. Now, in your opinion, what will be the next steps? How can we promote it? I have my idea. We definitely need to receive from the existing level of interaction, and we need to establish a working group. We need to start undertaking steps to establish our data sets, because at the moment, as Victor has said, we need to take a lot of people, set them before desks, lots of experts on both sides of the table. They're going to start writing this data set manually, almost, as it seems to me. But I think there are other ways to solve this problem. What steps, in your opinion, should be made? Oh, well, after this AI story, when we were presenting our proposals, our dreams about artificial intelligence. So, this case where our data set didn't end at estimating the patentability. We were aiming far higher than that. And at a certain point, somebody said that if we connect the past history, the past analytics, the current analytical data, both in Russia and worldwide, if we look at the patent landscapes in Russia and abroad, and if we look at the promising lines of development, then AI, with a certain amount of algorithms, would be able to identify areas, see topics where we need to go. You could make forecasts for the coming 5 to 10 years, identify promising technologies, and start investing in this technology. So basically, the areas of research and development, the areas of scientific growth could be extended. Yes, but even more than that. AI, for instance, offered us a surge in patents in the US, in Germany, in China, and in Japan. It was in 2017, 2015, 2017. We're slightly late. We only started doing this very actively in 2018, although you could forecast this back in 2015. What I'm trying to say, we did not stop dreaming, we did not give up. We're in close contact with our partners in this respect. We have been developing the system at the Ministry of Education because we need to monitor, to control, to see investments in R&D. We want to know where we invest, what is the payback, and what would be the best way to go so that our reports don't discuss hollow things, technologies which end up nowhere, so that we get some tangible result that would be interesting in the future as well. Basically, as we moved on, we saw that based on the results of any research, we received certain data that was used for certain intellectual property. So we look at it, we see there's a certain set of data which we can use, but there's also a set of the so-called gray data which was not involved, which was not included in particular IP, because the researcher did not need this data for their particular area of research. And we said, let us use this gray data too, and let us provide access to other researchers to the results of these experiments, so that research of if we research this, the cosmos, the physicists will take the data that he needs, the chemist will take the data that he needs, the geographer will take the data that he needs, etc., etc. So there's one research, but there's a lot of various data. You can structure this data, and you're going to continue your research. So we thought about this, and this brings me back to your working group, Sergey. I think we can discuss already, because we have a project that overlaps with your activities in one way or another. So let's discuss it somehow. As regards data sets and our joint work, I think it makes sense to create such a work group. I think that the participants will be the Ministry of Economic Development, it will be you, it will be an IT center. Yes, we need a technology partner. That's right, and we have been doing quite a lot to take this system that over the past 10 years was just a system of knowledge recording, but it has grown into a system of recording and monitoring, and then it will grow into a system of data management, knowledge management. For instance, we had very ambitious plans to develop our system of intellectual property management, to use neural networks, to use AI to do analytics, and then to do mutual cross-fertilization with the databases from Rospatent and development institutes, with an outlook to go into the Eurasian community, into the European community, so that together with the data centers and data hubs, both from Eurasia and for Europe, so that we can communicate, we could work together, and we could increase our potential. Maybe to speed up the development of Russian science. And if memory serves, as regards AI, we were probably the only ones who were proposing this cross-departmental approach to data sets. Yes, that's true. There were not so many agencies that proposed this approach. Yes, you're right. The way we work, the way we do research, it reminds me that there's life cycle of IP results, all the way from the idea to commercialization. IP, patenting, then turnover of the rights, to IP or IP assets, and then commercialization, and then protection of these rights. Now, basically, these blocks, these segments, these modules of the life cycle are not connected. They belong to different controlling bodies. They fall under different regulatory mechanisms, different technology barriers, and various agencies have control over various stages of this life cycle. So, probably to wrap up our session, I would like to offer this conclusion. We are facing large-scale departmental tasks. AI helps us to solve them, to interconnect them, and to interrelate them in one big production cycle. A cycle of innovation where innovation is generated and implemented. So this is the big interdepartmental task that we need to implement with focus on human, with our client-centric approach. I hope I have been able to make myself clear enough. If I have failed, please correct me. Now, dear colleagues, thank you very much for your participation. These are the results that we came to during our panel. I hope this panel was interesting. We offered bold views, we offered opinions of various participants. They shared their views as to where we were going. But most importantly, I wanted to make one thing clear. The government looks at AI technology, AI issues as a priority. It is under control at the very top of the Russian state, because technologies unite, technologies help us to solve large-scale interdepartmental tasks. So thank you very much, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for your time and for your part.